Quilt Monkey is brought to you by Aurifil Italian thread, perfectly suited for all your quilting projects, and Lessienne.
Hi, and welcome to Quilt Monkey. In today's show, we are looking at this brand new collection from Lessienne called Geogram. It's by a new designer with Lessienne fabrics, although she has been designing for quite a long time, and she is a graphic designer that's done an awful lot of work before. Her name is Samara Kaja, and she has put together this absolutely gorgeous collection of blenders and basics with a little bit of metallic ink and really great, really vibrant, almost neon fabrics and inks that I think are a great addition to anybody's stash. In particular, this print, it's kind of like a Morse code ... print. That is going to be so useful. It comes in so many different colours, and you can imagine it for binding quilts. It's going to look really cool. Background, I think this one is going to be a firm favourite for a long time in my stash. So this block I've put together is a kind of representation of what I think is happening in Samara's head. She's a little bit bonkers, and this I've called Inside Samara's Brain. It's crazy, there's a lot going on. It is a block that tessellates though. So when you put multiples of this block together, you will get a repeated pattern. So like where this half square triangle is, you put the next block to it, you're going to get like a flying goose effect. I've used all prints, but if you wanted something that was a little bit calmer, a little bit more restful, somewhere for your eyes to rest, you could use a mix of prints and solids, such as these Lessienne 1000 colour solids, which obviously match absolutely perfectly. And there's some absolutely fantastic colours in here that are just perfect for this collection. They'd also be perfect for you to use just by themselves. So I'm going to crack on, get all my stuff prepared, and we can make Samara's crazy brain. This is a nice big block. It's 18 inches unfinished and then 17.5 inches when sewn with other blocks into a quilt. So it is a nice big quick block to put together. Comes as a standard 16 patch, so 4 rows of 4 squares. And to make it up, you need to cut 10 6-inch squares for the half square triangles. So if you wanted to do prints with a background, then cut 5 from background and 5 from prints. I'm cutting all from print fabric, so I've got 10 prints there. So there's the 6-inch fabric squares. And then you will also need 6 5-inch squares. These are the ones that are going to be just the plain squares dotted in the block itself. So they just need to be 5 inches. Again, if you want to do that from a background, so the only prints that you've got are your geese blocks, then cut those from background fabric as well. From the bigger squares, you're going to make those into half square triangles. So you place a print and a background square together, right sides facing, draw a line down on the diagonal, and sew 1/4 inch either side of that marked line. Then cut on the line, open it out, give it a press, and trim your blocks down. Now I always cut my initial squares bigger, much bigger than I need. So it's always a full inch bigger than the finished unit that I end up with. I want a 5-inch half square triangle unit, and so my 6-inch squares have got a little bit of extra room for trimming. This way, if you're going to sew a lot of half square triangle units and you start to get a little bit bored or a little bit tired and you're not really concentrating as much because you've got Netflix on or whatever, and it's a really good bit. It doesn't matter so much if you veer off on your seam allowance a touch, because we've got extra room. It does make it easier for trimming. So I use this Quilt in a Day Square It Up ruler, which is absolutely brilliant. It's my favourite ruler. I can't rave about this enough. It's great for all of your half square triangle blocks. Trim those down like so. And then you can start laying out your block. So with the one that I've already prepared, I've sewn that together in a really random, all of the prints are mixed up, but you can be a little bit more specific. So you can sew your blocks together so that the half square triangles form a goose, just with the matching prints, and then add your background fabrics, and each block is going to be exactly the same. You're going to lay it out like so, so that when they're sewn together, you can see they tessellate together, so you create an extra little goose there. It's kind of tricky to do this upside down. Pop that one there, that one there. And the final goose unit goes like that. And then, as you can see, you've got less of an intense effect than the one that I've already sewn together. But you can do a mixture of the two as well, and I think that looks quite effective. You could even do a mixture of just background fabric and prints, and the all over crazy brain prints and the slightly less crazy brain prints. So I'm going to sew these together. I'm going to stack up each of my rows like so and take them to my sewing machine. And once I've pieced my rows, I'm going to press the seams so that they alternate. So one going one way, next row going the other way, and so on, so that they all nest together. So I will do that, and then I'll bring them back and show you. That's my finished block, and I've laid it next to my original block. And when you join the two together, as you can see, it creates this additional flying goose section, so that when you've made a quilt with these blocks, it's more difficult to see that they're an individual block that's been sewn together. It looks more like a kind of mismatched, crazy collection of half square triangles and squares, which I think is a pretty good representation of Samara's crazy brain. And then you've got the next thing to consider, quilting. And when you've got something with so many colours in like this, where do you go? How do you decide on what kind of thread colour to use? And you have a couple of options. You can go for something that's really subtle and a neutral that is pretty much going to blend in. This one is a Aurifil 50 weight in a very pale cream colour, which is number 2000, and that will just kind of sink into the colours, so you won't see it on the fabric itself. It is a 50 weight, so it's a very fine thread, and again the stitches just kind of sink right in. So that's one option. You could pick out one of your favourite colours in the fabrics themselves and go all out with that and pick a thread like this red one, so that when you've got it on some of the lighter fabric you're going to be able to see it, and when it's on some of the darker fabrics it's not quite so obvious. This is 2250 and is a really nice vibrant red colour. It's a really true kind of orangey red. Then you've got the variegateds, and I really like variegated threads, and it's exactly the same thing again. You can go for a more neutral, you can go for something that's going to be kind of more intense and visible. This one is basically just grey, but it's a variegated grey. So you've got slightly lighter and slightly darker shades of grey. It's 40-60, and that will just sink in just like the cream. You're not going to see your stitches too much with that one. Or you can have this crazy rainbow, which on the spool does look pretty intense. But when you start pulling it out and actually looking at the thread itself, you'll notice that there are quite decent sized sections of the thread that are each individual colour, and it goes quite gradually in this rainbow effect. So it's not as intense as when it's on the spool. Don't be put off when you see a variegated thread on a spool. Don't be put off by how intense it looks. It's a really good idea to just kind of lay it out on your quilt top and just see how it sits on all of the different fabrics. This one is 38-17 and it's got pretty much every single colour that we've got in this collection. So that's a really, really good match for these fabrics. And that's it. I love a 50 weight. It's my favourite go-to thread for piecing and for quilting. I think it's great for hand sewing. It's strong, but it's still very fine, so the stitches do kind of recede right into your quilt and you don't see it as much as you would with a heavier weight thread. So crack on with that. Go ahead, make some Samara Crazy Brain quilt blocks and have some fun with your quilting. And I'll see you next time on Quilt Monkey.